If you thought Birmingham's successful staging of the Commonwealth Games in 2022 was the final time, for now, that the United Kingdom's second city would be hosting a major multi-sporting event, then think again. In August this year, Brum will be hosting the IBSA World Games, an event for blind and partially sighted athletes. I'm John.
And I'm Michael. The World Games will feature 3 Paralympic and 8 non-Paralympic sports, with around 1,000 athletes from over 70 countries. This is Great British Bosses from Anything But Footy, the podcast which speaks to the people in charge of sport in this country. And ahead of the event being staged at the University of Birmingham this summer, let's hear from 2 of those charged with delivering it.
Hi, I'm Yuri Matischen, Managing Director of MLS.
Hi, I'm John Timms and I'm the Director of MLS and I'm the Event Director of the World IBSA Games in Birmingham this year.
John, although I've been told we need to call you Timsy because we have our own Anything But Footy, John.
Yeah, no problem. I have no issue with that.
The IBSA World Games. I mean, tell us first of all how excited you are that it's being staged this year in Birmingham. And for people that don't know, what is it?
Well, first of all, what a great opportunity to talk about blind and partially sighted athletes coming to the UK. The first manifestation of these games in the UK. 11 sports. Some of the best athletes in those sports in the world will be competing in Birmingham, and of which 3 sports will be trying to qualify to go to Paris 2024. And we're trying to make sure we get British athletes in particular, if we can help them, qualify to get to Paris 2024. So real opportunity there coming across. It's a great opportunity for us to talk about event delivery and to talk about the challenges and things. But above all, it's just exciting. It's just brilliant to be bringing an event like this in. And we're following the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham. So like we were joking in the planning stages. If you could get the Commonwealth Games right, you'll be ready for us when we arrive.
Well, we were both in Birmingham for the Commonwealth Games and we were there every day and we saw some fantastic sport. But above all, I think we saw a city that really rose to the challenge. And it was a challenge because, as we know, Birmingham didn't have the lead time that other previous Commonwealth Games host cities have had. But we saw a city that loves its sport. And I guess if you can harness 10% of what we saw in the summer of 2022, it's going to be a terrific event, the World Games.
Yeah, we're definitely looking to do that. Harness is a good word to use. It's not difficult to harness it. That's what's really nice. What we're seeing is everybody's come off the back of the Commonwealth Games with enthusiasm for events and event delivery, and particularly multi-sport event delivery, because that's exciting. Lots of different things going on across the city at the same time. So that's really great. And what we're also able to do is what the Commonwealth Games did is lots of people got lots of great experience. You know, they understand events, they've got trained, they've had customer service training as volunteers, they understand what it means to meet and greet people and encourage them to experience the city of Birmingham in its wider areas. And we're able to just harness all that and bring it all together and use it again and build on that experience. So we're really lucky in that respect. But the Commonwealth Games, like you said, great for the city. And we're looking to replicate that in a smaller way, but still the same enthusiasm.
Yuri, they always say that the Olympics is the warm-up for the Paralympics. So I think you're absolutely right saying that the Commonwealth Games was a warm-up for the World Games. How did Birmingham win the right to stage the event? And then what's your role, Yuri, at MLS to deliver it?
Many years ago, UK Sport and British Blind Sport came to us and said, is there an opportunity to work with blind sport? It's something of the disability sports in our country has had the least attention and least funding, and they're the ones that are least physically active as well. So what we wanted to do was try and promote blind sport with British Blind Sport. We went about a feasibility study looking at cities that could actually host this, and we came across. We visited Liverpool, we looked at Sheffield, we looked at Birmingham, and in the end, there were a number of cities. We came across Birmingham, who in effect had a city with already 30,000 blind registered citizens and had a university where there were 64 blind students operating and a number of staff. With the facility infrastructure, with the Commonwealth Games infrastructure, it was felt that Birmingham would be the strongest bid. The University of Birmingham were very keen to have it, and the City of Birmingham were very keen to have inclusion as a key theme post Commonwealth Games. So this really fed that opportunity, and we went about a feasibility. We looked at the partnerships and the stakeholders, and we could make it sustainable. And key to that was the area of University of Birmingham is called Edgbaston, and around it we could bring a range of facilities that were of sufficient standard that enabled us to make sure that the Games Village was just a 20-minute walk to 75% of the Games facilities, which is a fantastic value add when you have blind athletes, where transport is huge. So in the bid to the International Federation, once you brought them onto the campus and then said, we can walk to these facilities, it was a huge win. And a lot of work had been done on wayfinding through the university campus at Birmingham already. And so this really enabled us to have a fantastic bid. So we chose Birmingham. We went then on to the international bid. We got UK sport funding to support us and stakeholder funding. And we were awarded internationally because it was such a great offer.
And give us a little insight into the logistics that are required to stage the event. You mentioned there about the issues with transport. Well, you've got 1,000 blind athletes coming from 70 countries.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually going to be around 1,250, we think, now, and 70 nations. Interestingly, it's like any other major sporting event. You've got to have facilities of the right standard. The complications, as John and Alison and the team are finding, is often blind sport needs to be played in some sort of quiet environment. So if you're in goalball, shooting and so on, you need a facility where you can compete, but you also need to be able to replicate silence during competition. And so how you warm up and where you compete needs to be almost soundproofed in some aspects, or very much managed in terms of audience participation and so on. So some of the challenges are there in terms of trying to find venues that can be protected against external noise.
And John, this is, and there's no getting away from it, an elite sporting event. This is qualification for the Paralympics. Where does this sit in terms of that world stage, if you like?
Oh, it's a huge opportunity for athletes to put themselves, world ranking, qualification to other events, in particular the Paralympic Games for 3 of the sports. It's right up there. The demand to attend is huge, oversubscribed in some sports, and federations are having to go and find a way of selecting the teams that attend and their qualification processes. People have to qualify to attend these games. It's not just, okay, I'm a good level archer, I want to attend. You've got to have reached a level to get into these games. So it's really important people understand that this is going to be the best of the best coming to compete in their sports from around the world to qualify for events, and they're having to qualify to get here as well. So the level's really high, and for those sports that are trying to qualify for the Paralympics, this is life-changing opportunity when you get to the Paralympics for blind and partially sighted athletes to be recognised.
I love an opening ceremony. There's nothing better for me on a Sunday afternoon than bringing YouTube up and watching the opening ceremony from Brisbane 1982 whilst doing my ironing. What have you got planned for Birmingham 2023?
So it's really interesting because I love watching opening ceremonies too, and it's one of the things I used to make my kids. Anytime there was Olympics on, I'd be like, right, we're all sitting down to it. I don't care, it's 4 a.m, we're waiting for the GB to walk onto this track or wherever. So I love watching opening ceremonies too, so it's important. And I think that what's really key is for us is we're actually developing our opening ceremony purely thinking about blind and partially sighted people in the audience. We're looking to we're looking to use the Symphony Hall in the centre of Birmingham, which is one of the most acoustically brilliant venues in the world. From a sound perspective, we know it's going to be at the highest quality for those people in the audience. But we're also speaking with and we're developing using blind and partially sighted performers, musicians to help and lead on that, because they're advising us, and obviously they know what works for blind and partially sighted people in the audience. But we're looking to make it bright, exciting, inside the Symphony Hall, in Birmingham and bringing the whole Games family together at that point to celebrate the start of the Games, just like you would see in other opening ceremonies.
John, just two more questions on the World Games, and we'll talk wider about what MLS does. Firstly, when is it, and can people come and watch?
Yeah, so it's August. Competition actually starts on the 14th of August, and the opening ceremony, I think, is on the 16th. So yes, people can come and watch. It's actually free to attend most of the sports. We are charging to watch football, goalball and judo. They're the Paralympic qualification sports, so there will be some ticketing for those sports, and people will be able to find out information on that via the website. So that's all going to happen. Yes, they can come along. The venues are all across Birmingham, as Yuri described, majority in that Edgbaston area, but we are broader than that. We can't get everything into Edgbaston. We are looking to try and bring some things into the city centre as well. People can turn up. We'd encourage people to turn up. We'd encourage people to, particularly if you've got friends and family that are blind and partially sighted, let's bring all that group together so they can watch sport together and then enjoy it together and understand how it impacts each other.
And one more question from me before we move on, and I'm going to ask you, John, first, and then you, Yuri, as well. We are the Olympic and Paralympic podcast, anything but footy. That is what we do. We want to talk about the Olympics and Paralympics. 2012 in London, everyone tells us that it changed the game for the Paralympics and parasport. From your perspectives, because you guys have worked in it for a lot longer than me and Michael have talked about it, is that the case, or is it a British thing in our own mind? We were great at it, while actually the rest of the world thinks, well, no, actually Rio did something, or et cetera, et cetera. So, John, you kick us off.
Well, I could say I was there. I was the technical delegate for wheelchair rugby at the Paralympic Games in 2012, and it was completely transformational. The bar was pushed so high by UK and LOCOG and the IPC to so high. Everything was thought about. The biggest opportunity that was taken was the fact that Paralympic athletes were thought about in every step of the process in delivering those games, from arriving at airports, being met, greeted, transferred in appropriate vehicles, understanding the arrival process of different disabilities and what that needs, equipment requirements of athletes and teams, coming into the Games Village. The adjustments of accommodation were thought about well in advance to assist athletes and the experience of athletes. And then the venues and the competition was first rate. It was without a doubt a magnitude change in structure going forward. We delivered a World Championships in goalball in 2010 in Sheffield, and the goalball leads told us at that point, this is better than most Paralympics we've been to, John. This is brilliant. Thank you. Compared to 2012, our goalball World Championships, whilst excellent, and I'm not saying they weren't excellent, but compared to 2012, that was another step beyond where we got to in 2010. Rio had its challenges, everybody knows that, but they still made it happen. And what was carried across, I know, was the thought about what do the athletes need. That was always a priority. Make sure what the athletes have got, what they need, will compromise in other areas. And I think that's important. That was one of the biggest things from London that came out. The good thing in London was they didn't need to compromise on the other areas. It was well planned, well delivered. The legacy was fought from Olympics to Paralympics, was really tied together. We're working with Paris now, and I can completely see that relationship between Olympics and Paralympics. How do we transfer from one to the other? What do we carry over? How does that work? And that was really manifested well in London.
John was a technical official during the Paralympic Games and the Olympics. I was involved in sports presentations, so I was actually an in-venue announcer and commentator, and everything in the Olympic environment. This was for volleyball, so I did volleyball at Earls Court, and then I moved over to sitting volleyball at the Excel. But what was fantastic is the same level of sports presentation was continued. The crowds grew. In fact, the crowds were fantastic for disability sport. And so, you had that real engagement, and that continued through to the Paralympics from the Olympics in 2012. And I think it popularized disability sport amongst everyone in the nation. And I think that's, in a way, it's the transformation that we're looking for the World IBSA Games. We want to celebrate the abilities of the athletes that's what we wanted to create actually out of the games this year in Birmingham. Come and see these athletes who happen to be blind. I know our experiences from London 2012 was to see how Paralympians became athletes, full stop.
Yuri, it's as if you've listened to some previous editions of our podcast with what you've just said. We've always maintained, see the ability first, not the disability first. And that's always been our outlook, certainly when we've covered World, European Championships and Paralympic Games. Tell us a little bit about your company then, Managing Director at MLS. And it was something that came out of the World University Games in Sheffield in 1991. A lot of people sort of don't have terrific memories of that event, but for you, it was a starting point.
Oh, it was. I was working in London. I was the General Secretary of British University Sport, which I think perhaps many of you have come across in your next day lives. And we bid to stage the World University Games, and we chose the city of Sheffield to bid. 1987, we were awarded the games, and then I came over to Sheffield to work with a guy called Jerry Montgomery, who was director of sport for the city, then for the games. They'd had a phenomenal vision of regenerating the city from steel and coal through leisure and recreation. Not just purely for that purely on that basis, but it was a huge part of the regeneration package. So in 1987 to 91, it was the biggest single leisure recreation build of any city in our country. It was 200 millions then. So it actually also brought a tram system. It brought the refurbishment of the two theatres, as well as these facilities. And I know there might have been a little bit of a political debate about it lost a bit of money. It lost 10 million quid. Can you imagine staging anything for 10 million quid these days? And from that point, we said Sheffield will be a major event centre. It had a phenomenal pool that no one had ever built in the country. First pool for 50 years, first arena for 50 years. So from that, we began staging. We set up a company called MLS. We embarked on staging events. In fact, John joined us. We were talking about this, weren't we, John? Yeah. He joined us as a student on wanting work experience, and John gave a year of his life free over to the company, and from that point, joined the company, became part of the company. Myself, John, Sarah, Jerry's daughter, we've been in that company now for 30 years, pretty much, man and boy. And we've stayed together, and that's
eventually I'll like you.
But that's and we've grown through a whole range of experience. Our first major event was the 1993 European Diving Water Polo Championships and Synchro, never been held in Britain for about 50 years as well, and that was our first event. It was massive. 10 days of live BBC coverage.
And when you look back now at, for example, a British Diving Championships at Ponsforge, I've seen ice hockey at the Sheffield Arena, all the GB boxing success coming out of the English Institute of Sport in Sheffield. I even got on that tram and got dragged to see a U2 concert at the much missed Don Valley Stadium. 10 million doesn't seem like a bad infrastructure investment, actually.
Well, the loss of £10 million was the revenue loss on the games, which caused the political wobbles then. But Jerry, he became director of sport for the Commonwealth Games in Manchester, and we knew the scale of investment that was coming out of the lottery, the city, etc. And it was the Queen's Jubilee. So, it was hundreds and hundreds of millions going into infrastructure investment. And I think Manchester Commonwealth Games did for Manchester what it did for Birmingham, what it did for Glasgow. It was quite quiet, and then the residents of Greater Manchester got behind the Commonwealth Games, and it exploded. It was an event that Manchester have never left behind. They've just grown and grown, and look at the facility infrastructure now in that city. And in our own city, we're building our own arena now to house everything that we run. The visitor tourism impact on the region is significant. It's nice short of £1 billion a year, and it's one of the largest employers of our citizens as well. It goes way beyond sport. It is a true regeneration programme, sport, leisure, tourism.
Well, John, Yuri just dropped in there. Well, we're just building an arena in Sheffield. What else, John? Do you do? You're a man of, obviously, both of you are men of many talents. Tell us more about the other sports that you run, the events you run, and maybe where that commitment to parasports came as well.
Yeah, so we were involved in a lot of different sports and events and projects. I always say MLS is a company that's done every type of area of sports that you can think of. We've probably worked in it in one way or another, whether it's commercially, professionally, performance-wise. We work across all those areas within sport, venues, etc. We're building an arena. This is one of our exciting things that we're looking at. We're working with Yuri and Sarah in particular, have driven that project for us. But what we've done is it's one of the strengths of what MLS does is about working in partnership with people and bringing partners together across all our projects. And that's just an amazing partnership project to build this 2,000 seat venue in Sheffield on the old Don Valley Stadium site on the Olympic Legacy Park. And building legacy into that project as well. And then we're looking to, that venue will be open to the community around that area, as well as bringing in events for the right size and scale of the venue can host. So really exciting project that we're moving forward. And we could spend the next 3 hours talking to you about that, which we won't. Our other projects that we're involved in, we're delivering the European Para Table Tennis Championships later in the year. We're supporting British Para Table Tennis to do that. The city of Sheffield, which we're in Sheffield. We delivered the British Transplant Games, which is, again, a multi-sport games for people that had made life-saving organ transplants. That event last year created a media reach of 3.3 billion. And that's an annual event that we deliver every year at different cities across the UK. And our links to parasport always come back to when we work, we learn about the sports that we work with. So we pick up a contract in goalball, as an example. But what we're key about that is we need to learn about blind athletes. We need to understand the sport and the impact on those athletes. You take that knowledge and you can apply it to other Paralympic sports. Oh, we understand this in Paralympic sports. And over a period of time, we've definitely built up a wide knowledge of understanding what wheelchair athletes need, what blind and partially sighted athletes need, what athletes with cerebral palsy need, what do bocce athletes need, what do wheelchair rugby athletes need that are different to other para athletes. Excited working in parasports. It's brilliant.
Well, Yuri and John, we've never had a duo on Great British Bosses before, so it's a great first. But you mentioned a couple of people that you work with, Sarah and Jerry, and I think the listeners will need to know who these people are and the success that they've brought along with you guys.
Jerry was the founder of MLS. He was driven, through sport and leisure. He was a great venue operations guy, but he had the vision that sport and leisure can regenerate cities. And Sarah was his daughter, and she joined us in the company. And Sarah, within our structure, runs and operates the Sheffield Sharks basketball franchise that we collectively own. And that arena that we're building will be the home of the Sheffield Sharks franchise and the home of the women's basketball franchise, the Sheffield Hatters. That will be the core of why we're doing it. We want to give it a basketball home. The BBL in which we play, the British Basketball League, is growing rapidly, and we needed to invest. And this is our opportunity to build our arena. We're doing it in partnership with Canon Medical Systems because we've installed a diagnostic and medical suite into the arena, completely unique in the UK. So we have a diagnostic and medical suite, which is state of the art, and we will be able to scan athletes from elite to warrior athletes like us who we're past it, but also it's open to the NHS because there's a huge demand on the need for diagnostics. So it will be a clinical diagnostic centre on the home of the Sheffield Don Valley Athletic Stadium as was. But what's been created on that site is quite phenomenal. A home for rugby league and the Sheffield Eagles. We have a through school from 2 to 16 years of age in one of the most deprived areas of the city called Attercliffe. And also we have an advanced wellness research centre on the park run by Sheffield Hallam University. We're building a child health technology centre operated by the Sheffield Children's Hospital. And we have a university technical college for health and computer sciences. It's right next to the English Institute of Sport and the Sheffield Arena and Ice Sheffield. So that's why we're calling it the Olympic Legacy Park, because we're going to drive physical activity, elite performance, and the health and well-being of residents.
I don't know if there's enough hours in the day for what you two guys are doing. So we're going to have to let you go very shortly. But last couple of questions from me then.
We're driven.
You've used the word driven. You've used the word vision. I spent a lot of the second half of last year talking about why I thought Birmingham should be ambitious and bid for an Olympic Games. And I still believe that. But I've also, and this goes back to 2012 when I was working on regional radio in Yorkshire and covered the Olympics and Paralympics under the banner If Yorkshire Was a Country. Why can't Yorkshire as a region host something like the Commonwealth Games? And why don't we get together and do it, Yuri?
In 1994, our company was contracted by the city to bid for the Commonwealth Games. Myself and John and Jerry, we went into the room to bid for the Commonwealth Games for Manchester 2002 as the city of Sheffield. But we had to withdraw in that room because we had to sign a blank cheque to say we'd underwrite the Commonwealth Games. Manchester had the gall to do it, and we had to withdraw because the political climate of just coming through the World University Games, it was raw. So we had to have an understanding of what the budget was before we could sign, and we had to withdraw. Literally, I wouldn't call it the 11th hour, I would call it midnight, and we had to walk out, sit on a train, heads in our knees. It was dreadful. But yes, we should and could bid for the Commonwealth Games without doubt.
In terms of that infrastructure, a Yorkshire-wide bid, for example, I remember going to see in Hull, actually, at the KC Stadium, watching squash there. So there's no reason why Commonwealth Games squash can be in Hull. Sheffield, Leeds. I mean, there is an opportunity there, in all seriousness, isn't there?
We need to address an athletic stadium, don't we, John?
Yeah, you would need some infrastructure build. There definitely need to be some to make that work, but it's not anything dramatic. You've got lots of venues and facilities like you've just described across the region. So yeah, it could definitely happen. Even when Birmingham hosted the games, it was Birmingham, Coventry. You know, it expands out beyond into the West Midlands region, and they looked at it as more as the West Midlands. How does the West Midlands benefit from this? So it's definitely the case that Yorkshire could host. Bring it on.
Let's do it.
Be won't it, John?
Be right.
Well, Yuri Matischen, Managing Director of MLS Contracts, and John Timms, Director of the IBSA World Games, which are taking place in Birmingham this coming summer. We are delighted to have spoken to you, and thank you so much for telling us your stories on Great British Bosses.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.